This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. I don't know about you, but when the tariffs hit on Liberation Day, April 2nd, we were like, oh, is this really happening? We watched our portfolios crash in real time. Our company lost tens of thousands in profit on one deal overnight. And honestly, we had no clue what was coming next. On today's show, Lloyd and I, he's my business partner, mentor, and dad, are discussing how tariffs blindsided the machining industry and how maybe we're seeing the same panic-to-adaptation cycle we lived through during the pandemic. As used machinery dealers at Graff-Pinkert, we watched deals evaporate when Trump's tariffs hit. But after months of uncertainty and a dead quiet first half of 2025, things are finally picking up, maybe even ramping up fast. We're also going to talk about the economic war with China, why phone calls still make deals happen, and whether young machinists might want to bet on cam screw machines over CNC programming before AI takes over. I am so excited and honored to be with the great Lloyd Graff, my dad, my boss, my partner, my mentor, my fellow fruit connoisseur. Welcome back to the podcast. It's so fun to have you.
Well, thank you for that bogus introduction.
Nothing is bogus. How would any of that be bogus? Can you poke any
All
holes?
exaggerations. But listen, this is the machinery business.
Yeah. What does that mean? That we exaggerate?
Doesn't everybody?
Under promise, over deliver. I do exaggerate. I mean, see, we'll just go right into it. Our negotiation tactics. So I'm a student of the great Chris Voss, master negotiator, ex-hostage negotiator. And what he says is when you're going to name price in a deal, if it's X number, you want to start it off by saying, I know you're going to think this is kind of expensive. You know, I'm sorry. This is the market. This is what I was getting. And then the person is totally ready. They're ready for it to be high. And then you give them the price and they go, oh, I guess it's not that bad. But you come in with a little different tact. You don't want to do that, right? Are you afraid that that's going to have the opposite reaction?
Well, my thought is that you risk losing the customer's interest when you do that, because then the customers think that, oh, this is beyond my grasp.
Yeah, but this is what you do on the phone. You're going to give them the great reveal within 10 seconds. It's a different psychology. Your psychology is sort of the whole priming, right? Like, for instance, we were talking about fruit before. If you were to get some fruit and one person says, man, this is so good. Like, studies will show that you're going to taste the fruit and you're more likely to think that it's good versus if I was to taste the fruit and I was going to say, you're more likely to come in thinking it's going to be blah. And literally studies have shown that if two people agree on something, they actually have an even greater sensation for taste or how something sounds. So I understand where you're coming from, but this is his outlook, and I feel like it works. I don't know, and I feel like I'm Tim Ferriss or something. We're just like going off in this whole different direction to start it off with, just
Yeah,
we
but
we can.
this gives people a sense of what it's like to work at Graff-Pinkert
All
and
right.
to give and
Wait
take.
do you hear this? Wait do you hear this? Yeah, yeah. Wait do you hear this? So I've been working with AI a lot now. Like every day it's more and more. I work with Claude and ChatGPT. And you know, you really understand these, you really start getting the most out of it when you really have a conversation with it. You just go back and forth. It gives its opinion, you give your opinion back. And um, yesterday I was writing this long email to a customer that had given me the bait and switch. And at the end, I was doing something similar to what we were just saying about when you say something and you're kind of afraid to say it. It's what I call the accusations audit. So at the end of the thing, I said, this is when you tell people what's on their mind. You tell people this so they can hear it from you before they even get to say it. So the machine was a very, very high number. Um, cost a lot of money, over $1 million. And I said, a million some, I know a million some is a lot to spend for a used machine. And even Claude is similar to ChatGPT. Claude was like, I don't know if you want to say that. That might just, you know, r- put on some red flags for them and make them feel that way. But I had told it, I was like, no, I want you to write this in the style of Chris Voss. And I said, you know, it's true. They're going to be thinking this anyways. So you might as well not be afraid of it and say this. And Claude was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, you're right. We can't. So, anyways, I you'll have to ask me more about this AI stuff because I'm using it all the time in the writing we're doing, and in the machinery
So if you were a
business.
doctor, would you immediately give the people a cancer diagnosis as a possibility?
Where do you get that from?
Well, you're saying you give them the bad news first.
Well, no. And in fact, since you bring that up, um, AI and using ChatGPT and Claude has been really, really good for me. With my son Abe has gotten sick quite a bit lately with pneumonia. We finally figured it out that he had a piece of a walnut in his lung, and that had caused him to get pneumonia. And he just had it removed last week, and which was scary but amazing. And we're so happy, and now he feels good. But the thing was, he was getting pneumonia, and I was giving ChatGPT like the play by play. Like, you know, the doctor said it's pneumonia. He's got this high of fever. We're, we're getting these symptoms. And before, when you would type that into the web, you'd go to WebMD and it would just raise all these red flags like, well, it could be syphilis. It could be AIDS. It could be cancer. I've seen this one symptom and this caused it. Whereas this, you get to actually have a conversation, and it synthesizes all these things on the web and it gives you like very common sense stuff. It doesn't just automatically think that something is bad.
However, as I recall, you also called your friend Archie,
Yeah.
who is a doctor specializing in ENT, ear, nose, and throat, and he gave you a much more upbeat diagnosis.
No, he didn't. He gave me, I think he gave me a very similar diagnosis, actually. To
Okay, compared to WebMD, I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
More comforting.
there's a lot of criticism for older doctors. People say younger doctors have much better results because younger doctors trust data versus older doctors have seen it all. So they see one thing and they go, oh, well, it must be this. I treated it this way once upon a time. And then they do it. They sort of shoot first um, before they holistically look at things, which you experienced recently, didn't you? When you had a younger doctor and he helped you with your health issue?
This is true. This is true. I had been feeling cold, tired, and uh, downbeat.
For years.
Yes, right. And he, we had tried a lot of different things, and he also realized that I had a pituitary tumor which had been removed several years ago, benign tumor, but such tumors have a tendency to decrease hormone production, particularly over time. And so he had this idea of measuring what is called the ACTH factor, the cortisol factor, which is the hormone that wakes up the other hormone producers in the brain. And there is a drug that's been produced, that's been offered for years, that helps your body produce more cortisol. It's called hydrocortisol, the drug. And after getting blood tests, he prescribed this drug. And in a matter of just a few days, uh, I felt considerably better, much more awake, much less cold, and it has really changed my life.
Yeah. And you had a doctor before who,
It was an endocrinologist that simply said, well, you need this hormone and you need thyroid, but not thinking that the one thing that produced several different hormones for your body might be deficient.
and do you think that this doctor just approached things in a different way, in a more holistic way, in a more data driven way, that the other doctor assumed?
Yes, I do. And I think what he said, what he figured was, well, you've had these symptoms and they've gone on and on and on. And you've tried these other drugs. The one thing you haven't tried is this. So why not try it?
It's
And
been amazing. You're like half the time you're like another person than you were before. You're just, I mean, you're wanting to like go look at machines. I mean, you wouldn't have ever wanted to do that for the last few years. You just would. Don't you feel that way?
yes, I do. I feel more alert. I feel
You're
more,
wanting to like call people more. You're wanting to.
yes,
You're.
more positive, and definitely the cold factor has been relieved.
Ugh. Yeah, you used to fly on an airplane and like just wear a winter hat.
Well, doesn't everybody?
All right, look,
I'm astonished by these kids that come in shorts and t-shirts on airplanes. I
like
still
me,
find airplanes cold.
I just flew to Europe and I came in with. I mean, I did bring a sweatshirt, but all right. Look, I know we're fascinating to everybody. Um, these are the kind of things I generally roll my eyes about when I listen to other podcasts. But why not? But now let's dive in to giving people more of a window into our business, into the used machinery business.
Frankly, I think what we have just discussed is relevant.
It is. We've touched on some things that are
Because
very
A, it
important.
shows how we talk to one another and relate to one another. And B, it's an approach that we take when we're discussing an issue.
You just hope that we don't get too distracted talking about fruit or the Cubs or, which brings me to something we were just talking about. As everybody who follows this podcast closely knows, that I have sort of an obsession with serendipity, with luck and making your own luck and things falling into place. I talk big game. Every morning I have like an aphorism where I say, I am a serendipity magnet. I create, I see, I seize opportunity everywhere. And I say that out loud like 5 times. And then at night, every single night, I write down one serendipitous thing that happened to me that day. And sometimes I have to like work really hard to figure that out. But, my life coach, Ginny, she said that, the thing that you look at like right before you go to sleep, that's what you think about. And that's what you, which is totally true, because like I know when I'm watching like one of our TV shows, like I'll just dream about the TV show. So you better watch something positive if you're going to watch something late at night. But the thing is, in order for serendipity to happen, you have to say the right things. You have to do the right things. And one of the things you have to do is to call people on the phone and talk to people, because that is so often when the magic happens. I'll just give an example. Over the last 2 days, you called one dealer because you wanted to research Haas prices. That dealer called me because he thought that I had inquired about it. He called me yesterday. And he's like, oh, yeah, I have these Haas prices or whatever. It's a guy I had talked to once in a while, but never really talked to very much. And but while we're on the phone, I was just like, everybody's looking for Star machines right now, Star SR32s. It's like everything, they want those or they want L32 Citizens. And so I just did what, when you're looking for serendipity, you have to ask the right questions. You say certain things and you ask the right questions. So I just said, hey, do you have any Stars? Because everybody's been asking about it. And he says, well, I have this 2010 one and this 2011 one. They're sort of mid-range, not so old that somebody wouldn't be interested, not as new as people are asking for. Everybody wants something in the last 10 years. The prices were not ridiculous, but they were nothing I was going to make much money on. But still, it was like good knowledge to know. And you never know, maybe we can make a few pennies together. And then this other guy calls or emails looking at our website where we had some 20 millimeter Stars, some Star SR20s. And I will confess that sometimes we have machines on our website that aren't available, but I'm not 100% sure they're not available. So I keep them on there because they cause people to call. Now, if I was absolutely sure they weren't available, then I'd probably take them off. But I didn't know, right? So I call the guy that has these SR20s, guy we've known a long time in Chicago, and figuring that they weren't available. And he tells me, no, we're slammed. We have so much work. They're totally not available. And I say, okay, well, what are you looking for? And he says, well, I'm looking for some Star SR32s. If you had any, I want to increase my ability. So I said, well, as a matter of fact, I just talked to somebody today that has some, 2010, 2011. They're probably too old for you, but, and he's like, well, um, you know, uh, maybe I'd be interested. Get me a quote. And so finally, I get a price and I send him the information. And my negotiation discipline, as I talked about before, is that I always try to talk on the phone about price, because then I can go in with my whole shtick of, you're probably going to think this is high. So I did that. And then he goes, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And he's a negotiator. And of course he's like, well, is this negotiable? And then he even stopped himself and he goes, of course, everything's negotiable. And then he says to me, how about hydromats? Do you have any hydromats? And I go, well, as a matter of fact, we do have a guy who's selling this gorgeous Epic HS hydromat. And people who don't know about hydromats too much, these HS machines, they're really interesting. They have these chucks that go vertical, like up in the air, and they can do some incredible stuff. But they're very rare, and it's very rare to find the right customer for them. But bingo, he says, oh, I'm interested. And this is like, could be, we'll see what happens, but this could be way more interesting than the whole Star thing. So had I just emailed him, none of this would have happened. It all started because did you email the dealer originally, or did you try calling the dealer originally, Dad, about the Haas?
No, actually, I think Rex probably called him.
So Rex called one dealer, then the dealer called me, then I asked about the machines they had. Then another guy emailed me about some 20s. I called that guy. Then I said to that guy, let me go check on those. I talked to this other guy. This other guy says, I'm looking for a 32. I call about the 32. Then he says he's looking for a hydromat. This all happened in about 72 hours. And it only happened because we picked up the phone.
And asked the question that elicited the response that connected with something in our buy and sell memory.
Yeah. Well, and what I didn't really do, well, so asking questions is great, but there's also what's called giving serendipity hooks, which is where, for instance, the guy I spoke with today, Sammy, who I was talking to about the stars, he ended up asking me about hydromats. But what I could have done, I like to not say should, I like to say could. What I could have done was, knowing that he had hydromats and I had a hydromat, I could have gone and said, oh, by the way, we have this hydromat. I know you like hydromats. That would have been a really good thing to try to create the serendipity as well. So you want to ask the right questions, but if you have certain information that somebody might be interested in, like, that's another arrow in your quiver.
True. And related to that, last week, I happened to be looking at an old correspondence that we had with the dealer regarding Euroturns, CPS machines.
Mm-hmm.
And in the correspondence was him telling us about a conversation that he had had with another person who has one Euroturn, but has quite a few hydromats. So I saw that and I said to myself, I haven't talked to this fellow in a long time. I'm going to call him and offer this hydromat that you were just talking about, the HS machine.
Ah, yes, I know where you're going with this.
So I called him and I had his cell phone in my files. I called him directly on his cell phone and picked up. And he said, "Oh, hi, Lloyd," because he had me on his cell phone. He had
Amazing.
my name, so he knew to pick up the phone. So I offered him this hydromat, and he said, "I doubt we're going to be interested. You can quote me on it, but I don't think we're interested." Well, I said, "Well, just while I have you on the phone, what are you looking for?" "Well, this is a crazy thing, but," he said, "we really missed the boat in not developing our Mexico connections." He said, "So many companies have moved major operations to Mexico, and they really want to deal with people who have factories in Mexico." He said, "If I could buy a plant in Mexico," and I'm not talking about a big one,
We need
I'm
to offer
talking
him
about
the second one.
I'm talking about one that's not too big and not owned by one of the uh, holding companies in the United States that uh, is
Yeah,
in
the
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 heating
private
business. That's
equity.
it. What?
Yeah, like the private equity people that just
Yes.
buy it,
Right.
flip. Yeah.
I said, "I have the perfect possibility for you." And we talked. Anyway, we ended up exchanging NDAs with the people who have the company for sale on that same day. And these people seem to be quite interested in this possibility.
And that's why
Another
we're in
instance,
that business
another
because,
instance of serendipity and something completely out of the blue
yeah,
that is awakened by the choice of questions.
absolutely. And but that's one of the main reasons why we've gone into this business of buying and selling companies. We seldom are actually, and now we could do that, and maybe that would be also a great thing to just start banging the phones, asking people if they're looking to buy or sell a company. But
It's less likely that they'll talk to you.
maybe, I mean, things happen organically. Um, we had these citizens that we bought from Japan that I've written a solo podcast about it, and we haven't published it yet. We finally sold them to somebody who loves them, but they sat with us for about 2 years, and but no matter how much, even though we lost money, these machines caused somebody to call us who was just curious about the citizens, and then it was the same thing. Like um, I used serendipity hook. I said, we buy and sell companies. Would you be looking to buy a company? And they said, actually, no, we're looking to sell a company, our company. And that it all happened because of these machines that we made no money on, but in a way we made money on them.
Well, this is if you take the long view regarding serendipity.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work bang, bang, bang. As a matter of fact, it virtually never does.
You have to be looking for it, but you can't be expecting it to happen right away. I find if you have your mind on it, then it can be helpful.
But you can't force it because just because you're interested in it doesn't mean anybody else is.
That's true, but sometimes if you just have the right mindset of You know, maybe this thing didn't happen the way I wanted it to, but this could be serendipity. I mean, I just went to Germany on a trip for a big deal, and there's about a 98% chance that deal is not going to happen. I went, um, and but there was two or three things that happened on that trip that were totally unexpected, and the trip maybe in those cases will be actually more important than if I had just gone on that trip, made the one deal, and went home. These other things that happened, and I went in understanding that and believing that you know this this happened for a reason. All right, let's go into something um, a little more concrete. Uh, how would you summarize um, the first 8 months of this year as far as how successful it's been for
For
us?
us, I mean, if you're looking at the numbers, it has been pretty dismal, actually. First three
That's
months
one
were
word for it. Yeah.
first 3 months were okay. The second 3 months were awful, and the last 2 months have shown promise, but not made up for the three dismal months, April, May, and June.
I think you're being kind by calling them dismal. I was going to use something a little bit more R-rated, but um, yeah, it's we've been in the house of pain. But
Well, let's say pandemic worthy.
well, I mean, the pandemic actually didn't turn out to be that bad.
Well, that is true. That the post-pandemic period was the best period that we've seen probably since the mid '90s.
All right, all right. Now tell me if you think this is crazy or not. So really, like the last month, I mean, we are on the cusp of making a few. We've made a couple deals in the last month, and it's looking like this next month is going to be pretty decent too. Um, are the tariffs like the pandemic, like doom and gloom? What the hell are we going to do? And then they go, all right, we can work with this. And then all of a sudden, like, bye, bye, bye. I just thought of that
That's an
this moment.
interesting. I think that's a very interesting comparison, Noah, and I think there's some merit to it. I think there was a panic, basically a panic, not as bad as the pandemic, but uh, among business people, confusion, fear, followed by indecision.
Well, and anger on my part. Um, we had
and,
this,
and anger. Yes.
we had this deal. We bought a machine in Germany and we sold it to a company in the United States, and then boom, tariff. Um, and I mean, we're fortunate that we didn't even go into the red. It was it went from an amazing deal to like I'm amazed that we didn't lose money. And so um yeah, I mean, look, I do my best to try to keep politics out of this, but this just supported my anger. But let's go back to what we were saying. It People seemed scared when the tariff started, and also just sort of like flummoxed a little bit.
Well, the fact is that Trump's approach showed that he had not planned this well at all. And, you know, we had a 135% tariff on China, and then it was reduced to, I don't know, 30%. And you just, there was absolute bewilderment about China. And then China said, okay, you want to do this? No more rare earths for you. And all of a sudden, the automotive industry went into a panic because they have to have the rare earth uh, ingots to make their magnets that go into every car that they make. And, so you had ripple effects like this. You had the import duties on aluminum and steel. Well, nobody knew exactly what this meant. And then you had import duties on Canada and Mexico.
And you
And
also
nobody
had somebody just being uh,
nobody knew
a,
what it meant.
a jerk.
So this all happens when you're at the PMPA
Yeah,
event
the PMTS
in
conference.
Cleveland.
It was trippy.
And
Liberation Day was during
everybody
the
at
conference.
Liberation Day, everybody throws up their hands and says, "What's going on?"
I know.
And that's what we
31,
saw for
25%,
For 2 months,
31%.
nobody did anything.
It's just, well, you were telling me yesterday about the conversation with a very close customer regarding his business and how he deals with the metals and passing off the cost. And why don't you elaborate on that?
Well, the import duties on steel, in this case, it was steel that he couldn't get easily in the United States, and he was importing it from Europe. And what he has done is have his customer, in effect, pay for the steel, and then it's imported by Nucor and stored in one of Nucor's warehouses. So, in effect, he isn't risking the costs on the steel, which go up and down and in and out. And his customer is assuming that risk because he needs the product.
So he's what
And
the merit.
rather than pay 1 or 2 or 3 or 5% extra with his customer having to borrow the money to buy the steel, they would rather buy the steel. Meanwhile,
So wait, the merits of storing the steel
the
is
cost
to
of storing the steel,
make sure you know what the price is.
and he's storing the steel as insulation to not being able to get it, because the key thing for the client is having a steady supply of product.
Okay, so that's the main reason to store it. I
Finished
thought it
product.
was because it was going to lock in the price.
Well, it does. It does lock in the
So it's
price for
both
that moment.
reasons.
So they know what the cost is going to be. Nucor ends up making a small amount for storage, and the customer is assured that he's got 2 months supply of product.
Right. And then we all pay later at
The
the
buyers
car
are the
dealer.
ones who
And
ultimately pay. Although what we saw in this past quarter is General Motors taking a huge hit on what they attribute to tariff costs.
is that they were taking a hit because people weren't wanting to buy as expensive cars, or because people
Well,
were.
no, I think what General Motors did and Ford did is they held the price and they absorbed the extra cost of the tariffs themselves, figuring that it was important, particularly with prices jumping around as they were because of Trump's indecision and countries' indecision about what to do with the United States on tariffs. So rather than lose the clients, rather than lose a customer. And if you lose a customer, let's say on a Tahoe SUV, where you make a lot of money, and then you may never get that customer back. It was their feeling that they'd be better off taking a hit for at least a quarter, and they don't know how much longer, rather than lose the customer,
Right.
which is a logical decision. I
Did it
mean,
also have to do with the whole, like, when the tariffs came in, everybody went and bought real fast, and so there was that rush, and then maybe because of that, people bought less?
that could be too now. That could also be that there was a big rush to buy because companies, let's say the car companies, were advertising, uh, you know, buy now before you have to pay for the tariffs.
They were
So people
actually
did rush in and
doing.
buy, and uh, and because, let's say, a General Motors held the price, now they're seeing their stock go down 10% because they took this enormous hit on the tariff cost
Fascinating.
and disappointed the people on Wall Street with their earnings in the past quarter.
Hmm. Um, so
It brings up a really interesting question on how does the United States deal with China? And and this affects everybody in the machining business because China is the manufacturing behemoth in the world. I mean, they manufacture more stuff than anybody else, including the United States. I read something that China produces 5,000 ships a year. The United States produces five.
I can't believe that. I mean, is it?
We're not talking about canoes. We're talking about naval ships. We're talking about uh, uh, tankers. We're talking about big boats.
But I mean, is that like they produce the entire ship start to finish, or is it that you know they produce a lot of stuff and then we assemble it here? I'd like to see the article so we know what the heck. It's hard to know that, right? Everything's made in China. Everything has a part made in China. So I'd be curious to know, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so what Trump has done with the tariffs on China has some merit in my mind. It certainly there's a rationale for it. When he was in office the first time, he put a 10% tariff on China, and then Biden kept that tariff. A lot of people wondered if Biden would keep that tariff, and Biden did keep that tariff. Now he's put an additional tariff, significant tariff on China now, and is still negotiating various deals with China. China holds a lot of cards as far as manufacturing goes. Because so many companies have moved operations there, we rely on a lot of things with China. And in my mind, essentially, we're in a war with China, an economic war.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. My thing is, if China is the enemy, then don't we need all the friends that we can get, like in Europe and South America? That's the issue. All of a sudden, now we're going it alone. That's the way I feel.
Well, the tariffs are a very complicated issue, but it's also complicated by the fact that we are in a long term fight with China for dominance in the world. The United States has by far the most potent armaments and and it has still by far a tremendous advantage in Silicon Valley and in creativity. But Chinese, are playing the long game, and they believe that over time they will defeat the United States. However, they have enormous problems there now.
Oh
One
yeah.
of their biggest problems is their birth rate falling. Another one of their huge problems is they overbuild enormously in real estate, and they have virtually whole cities that are empty.
That's crazy.
So, they have huge problems too. So it's going to be very interesting. But so taking it back to Graff-Pinkert and taking it back to our clients,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden on April 2nd, Liberation Day, uh, the Trump drops these enormous tariffs and then says, well, we're going to make some deals. Nobody knows where we're at, and people in the face of crisis decide to do nothing. Now you have in recent years seen a beginning of work come back to the United States because the Chinese are not so good at what they do in many aspects. Also, their costs are going up, so the disparity in prices is not as great. But then you add these tariffs that Trump has put on, and China has some real issues. But they have a lot of advantages too. So this war with China is a very significant thing, and you are seeing companies bring work back to the United States.
Or Mexico.
However, companies worry that this will be temporary. They'll be looking for other sources, whether that be in India or Vietnam or some other place. So you still have a lot of indecision out there. But you also have some inflation now, particularly in machine tools. So you're looking at, say, a Doosan that cost $225,000 5 years ago, now is over $300,000. This changes the market on used machines.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it seemed like nothing would sell for the last few months, and then I was looking for an M machine for a customer, an M Citizen, just yesterday or the day before, and I emailed a fellow dealer, and she went and checked on that machine, and she's like, oh yeah, it was sold. And then she checked. I was like, well, what other machines do you have? And she's like, everything's just selling. She just wrote me that today. Like, there's nothing available. And I was like, I guess that's a good thing. I mean, I think it's better to be in that situation where it's harder to find good stuff because everybody wants it than to be in the,
Nevertheless, one thing that isn't bringing good prices generally, at least auction prices, are
screw machines.
multi-spindle screw machines.
And I don't think that's going to change.
You never know.
Not Wickman.
You never know.
You never know. I remember 10 years ago or something, maybe a little more, we wondered if anybody would buy a Davenport. I remember we had this really nice Davenport we had in our shop for like a whole year. And I think it was from the 90s, and it didn't sell. And I just sort of dismissed it that nobody would buy a Davenport. Davenports go for more money and sell more than Wickman's now by far. It's crazy.
Yet you had an auction in California and Davenports brought $500 each. So the thing is, what we're saying is, if people want a Davenport, they want a Davenport that will do their work. They don't want just a Davenport.
Or they want something dirt cheap.
Yeah, or essentially for nothing because they'll have to rebuild it. So, what we're saying is that it's a market that's hard to figure. Because yes, people will come in and say, yeah, I want that machine. I'll pay significantly more than it went for in an auction, but I want it the way I want it. I want it with threading, I want it with pickoff, and I want it with noise tamer, and I want it in the 90s. Okay.
Such a great vintage.
You can sell it. What?
I always say if a multi-spindle was born after I was born, then it's a good vintage. All right. And I'm not sure if I asked you this question before, but I had a very interesting philosophical question that I'm going to ask on LinkedIn. So I've been pretty active on LinkedIn and often putting these polls out as far as, companies, what position are companies most looking for? Setup, machinist, programmer, and it seemed like the biggest demand was programmer. Did that surprise you that programmer would be the biggest? CNC programmer?
Well, I think you have to adjust for the audience in LinkedIn.
Okay, that's true, but
it's a younger, and it's not as conversant in what's going on in metalworking.
Fair enough, but here's where I'm going with this. That is a good point. So I said, well, as I've mentioned, I've gotten into AI quite a bit. If you ask my wife, she will snicker about it that I ask it a lot of questions. But I said on there to one of the people that had commented, where do you think AI is going as far as like infringing upon the demand for a programmer? Because one of the things that AI does is coding. And he said, yeah, pretty, gradually it's gonna just do so many of the things that a coder or a programmer would do. And it's just going to replace a lot of people. So here's my question. All right, everybody says they're getting rid of their multi-spindles because they have nobody to run them. But the people who can run them, because they have the people, many of them still want to do it. If you were a younger person going into the machining trade and you were trying to take a contrarian path for the long game, would it be a longer term path to work on a cam multi-spindle screw machine than be a programmer who eventually would be replaced by AI? Because it's going to be a while before there's a robot to go in and replace cams and adjust things manually. But I think a lot quicker, somebody going in and programming a machine, a computer going and programming a machine.
I would agree with that. I think that somebody who can set up, let's say, Davenport's or Acme's.
Acme's or
Uh,
Shutas or whatever. Yeah.
um, they ought to be paid a premium. And how long will they continue? I mean, as long as there's high volume work, and maybe high volume work will go away to be replaced by banks of CNC machines, but I don't see it coming very quickly. So I would say the longer game, between 10 and 20 years, I think favors the screw machine setup man.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain companies, certain customers that they're just, they're just whizzes with their multis. They train their people from within. They have people that want to run them. They know how to rebuild machines. And if you were to be working at their shop, maybe the one that can work on an Acme or maybe a more sophisticated cam multi-spindle operator, maybe that is a job that will last longer than the programmer. And that whole AI thing is so interesting. Like a cheap lawyer, like they're all going to be replaced by AI. You need a document made. Like the only people that are going to do well are the sophisticated people that have already been a cheap lawyer and worked their way up. So I mean, I think that
the people with very sophisticated people skills.
Yeah.
Although you may see divorce lawyers and personal injury lawyers may last longer, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But it's an interesting question. I mean, I heard somebody say, what are the 2 skills that somebody should have coming out of high school that will enable him to make or her to make a living? And the answer was be fluent in Spanish and know how to weld.
It wasn't. I thought you were going to say people skills, but you may not need people skills.
Oh, I think you will. I think you will. Although AI may provide a lot of the friendships that are out there that because of
there's crazy stuff
and a million other reasons why particularly men have difficulty making friends.
I mean, I'll give you a lot of credit that you've actually have experimented with ChatGPT.
Well, why do you say that? I'm only 80.
Yeah. No, I give you credit. There's a lot of people that are, I don't know. I'd like to know where like the age goes where clearly everybody is messing around with it. Like it'll be interesting when we go on vacation to talk to your granddaughters who are teenagers and to know what they're doing and what their peers are doing.
I would say they're not using it as much as you are, but I could be wrong there.
You might be wrong. I don't know.
But people say AI is going to make writing a lot easier. I don't use ChatGPT to help me write stuff, but what I do use it for when I'm writing is to provide me with facts. And
usually they're right. Usually, but you have to.
Interesting tidbits, like the last column I wrote, the one that appeared today, where I wrote about Rich Hill. I checked Rich Hill in ChatGPT, and it told me that his nickname was Dick Mountain. And I thought that was funny, so I used it.
Did you double
Would
check
I have
it?
ever known that? Would I have known that had I not checked ChatGPT?
Yeah, I know,
No.
but that is like that's the kind of thing that it might hallucinate and just come up with something.
No, the fact is, it is true, and I heard it actually on the TV broadcast.
I love
And
talking baseball with ChatGPT, although they often get things wrong. But here's an interesting little tidbit. So after you write your blogs, I always put them in to ChatGPT or Claude just to say, hey, did I miss any punctuation? Like first I go in and do my own punctuation on there. And then I like to get their opinion. And they usually go, this seems like a really good blog for today's machining world. It gets your tone so well. But this last one, you were talking about Rich Hill's pitches, and you had a typo. You said like sweepers, and you meant to say splitters, but you wrote spitters, and then it questioned it, and it was like, are you sure what you meant? That doesn't really make sense. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, he meant to say splitter. And then I joked, I was like, but he could have said spitter, like a spitball. And then it comes back to me, and it's like, oh yeah, no, it couldn't be a spitter. Spitballs have been banned since 1920. And but I mean, that's pretty useful.
well, I didn't write spitter, but it could have, and it could have
No,
been.
no, you wrote spitter. It was a typo. You wrote spitter.
You didn't see the longhand.
Ah, touche. That's true. That's true. But have you?
However, Ridgely may have used ChatGPT to transcribe the
That's what I was going to say. I mean, have you ever just tried putting your long hand into ChatGPT and seeing how well it transcribed it? Because like,
no, I haven't.
Rex, our main sales guy, he writes these long descriptions of machines, particularly Acme's, about all the attachments and all the positions and everything, and then sends it to Kelly, our office manager, to retype. And she was busy, and so I took a picture of it and put it into ChatGPT, and like 95% of his chicken scratch was just put perfectly together into a quote.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, things like, we just use it for such little things. Like, I'll be reading superhero books with Abe, my son, and he'll be like, who's this superhero? Who's this person that they don't label in there? And then I take a picture of it and I put it into ChatGPT, and usually it will say who that person is. It's kind of trippy.
Well, we're well over an hour, by the way.
Long form, that's the thing. So
we're doing a Rogan.
Yeah, like 5 hours. I've only listened to Joe Rogan maybe 2 or 3 times. Have you ever listened?
I honestly have never listened to him.
How are you thinking that the rest of the year is going to be? And I can go first, or you can go first.
I think it's going to be better than the first half. And I think that I think it'll be 50% better. That's my prediction.
I think it's going to be a lot better. I think next week is going to be a lot better.
Of course, I've been saying that for several weeks.
All right, here's another question to you. Do you have anything on your mind that you're going to do to be better, to make the business work better in the next 4 months? Just something little. Call more people, do more advertising. I don't know. Meditate.
What I have found is if I can talk to more people, if I can reach more people, I can make more magic happen.
Yeah.
So that is my goal. In the past, I have not been active enough, and that's probably because of lack of organization, partly, but partly because I was feeling crummy too.
It's a good
So
excuse.
I don't have that excuse. So my goal is to make more touches.
Yeah. Me too. That's one of my main goals. Make more touches and do more advertising. Maybe what we need to do is do something more defined, like
Yes, if we
you
could make a goal of talking to 10 people each day.
I was going to have something much more modest. I was going to say, like, you either have to make 5 calls or talk to one person. I think that's something a little bit more accessible,
More realistic, yeah.
or even 3 calls. Like, let's start talk to one person or 3 calls. I don't know. I mean, even just that. That's I feel like if you just go, I'm going to talk to more people, it's a little less. And then if you want to take it to another level, you do that, and then you document it and you write down in a diary who you called.
Yes, another thing is to be less passive as far as monitoring emails. I mean, you can waste an enormous amount of time in that rabbit hole.
Oh, you're saying spend less time monitoring the emails?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they say that if you're always going and checking your email, like, you lose a lot of productivity. If you wait like every hour to check, then you have a lot more productivity. I feel like
I agree with that.
you just crave those little shoots of dopamine that you get from somebody asking about a machine, or
Right. Or even going to look and see if I had comments on my blog.
yeah, which you can't just use as the only metric for if it was successful. Well, I wish you and everybody a wonderful upcoming August. I hope you're going to do something fun, take a little vacation, refresh, reset. We are beginning of August, and I need it. So keep making parts or doing whatever you do, and I hope you like the show.
Thank you, Noah. Good job.
It's always a pleasure with you. Thank you.